But, when I look back in raising children, there was so much unknown all the time in terms of what the next step is. With raising kids, you kind of think, okay, I know what this 2-year-old is up to.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, they turn 2.5 or 3, and you don't understand anything about what's going on. And so I think what we're talking about...
And just for a second, what one of your 2-year-olds is like, and then you get another one, and their 2 is completely different than the other one.
That's right. That's the whole temperament lens.
Yeah. So there's no... Yeah,
there's no rule.
Totally.
There's really no rule.
Time,
And I think that maybe, Rosie, that's where it's about developing our mindfulness and our attitude of patience and current moment time. I don't know what to do, so I'll just see what's going on with my kid. I'll try and reduce my intensity and not be so reactive, because a lot of us tend to be reactive in the world. And I'll try and be patient and see what's really going on, and then kind of figure out what's happening next. And I think that if parents can do that in relationship to their kids, it comes also from a place of doing it in relationship to oneself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process that happens with both. Don't you see that with your daughter? The more you're compassionate to yourself, the more compassionate you can be to her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure she teaches you some of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So being a parent allows you to practice self-acceptance, compassion, authenticity, and it benefits yourself, it benefits your kids, and of course it benefits the universe. And I think the whole issue around authenticity is very hard for parents. Is that something worth talking about right now?
I'm sure it is.
But you're
going
back to me, are you? Okay.
Yeah,
it's so easy for me to go away from myself.
It's just something that you're used to. You're the parenting expert, right? You're Nurse Rona, the parenting expert.
I know. My kids said to me when I was going to be an advice nurse and get paid for it, they said, "Oh, good. Now you can get paid to give other people advice and not give us so much advice." Go ahead, Rosie. I'll follow your lead here.
And I would totally love your advice. It's not that, but I want to go back to this edge that you're on. So you're talking about authenticity and how important that is. And authenticity changes as we change.
Right.
So sometimes to be authentic means that we need to be or express in different ways than we've been and expressed for different parts of our lives. And you're moving into another part of your life, and I really want to kind of invite you to explore what's feeling authentic now that maybe didn't feel authentic just a couple of years ago or even a couple of months ago. What are the things that you're feeling that you're being called to share with the world? Aspects of yourself, maybe your spiritual practice, maybe some of the wisdom that you've accumulated that transcends all that you know as a parenting expert.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Rosie. Hard one.
Yeah.
I think, I was raised to please others. I had a mother who really did her best, sweet woman, lovely woman, but also had her blinders on, and couldn't always see, and she was under so much stress financially. And my father was very challenging. He had, I think, what we now call PTSD after the war, and a lot of mental health issues. And so I was raised to be a very good girl and to please others. And, some of it was very unhealthy for me. And it wasn't anything that I, could talk about. I couldn't share with anyone. I was afraid. And so all my life, I think I've been that person who is there to help others and to please others. And as a nurse, that worked. As a mother, that worked. My second husband, Nick, didn't require that of me. And that's why I think I love him so deeply. He can take care of himself. And he's there to help me as well as me help him. My older son even said to me the other day, "Mom, is there anything you need help with?" And I had a smile on my face. It was by phone, and then some tears came to my eyes because people don't usually ask me that. It was really nice, and I needed help with something, and he intuitively knew that. So I think part of probably the authenticity that I'm coming to know or becoming aware of is trying to understand myself not as the helper, and trying to understand how that is part of my nature. It's part of my fixation, if you want to talk Enneagram terms, and it's part of my coping mechanism. When you're a child and life is not going well, one way to cope is to be the helper and the good girl. And whenever something traumatic happened to me, I just kind of separated. In fancy terms, it could be called disassociation. But I could separate sort of everything's okay from this isn't okay. And so I learned how to do that. I mean, I was even date raped when I was about 18. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone. I could, separate that out. I didn't ask for help, for myself. And, those experiences build in a lifetime. And, if you think about 1 in 4 women are abused sexually in their lives, and almost as much for men as well, you think about how many women you meet who are coping, who have learned, for me, since a young age to separate out who I am. And so I think a lot of my life has been part of reintegration and also repairing things. And I think this authenticity for me, is trying to see myself for who I am, to sense myself in a different way. And it's hard to talk about because it's not linear. It's such an interesting process. So part of it is to not always think about helping others, even though that's so much part of my nature, but to see simple things like making sure I go to the Y at least 4 times a week to walk in the water. And when I walk in the water, I feel more myself than almost any other time. To put on the calendar a time when my husband and I are going to drop everything and be with each other for an hour and a half in the evening, say, or in the morning. But everything else stops. And we have that time, whether it's for sex or massage or talking or touching, whatever. But it's just the 2 of us. That has really helped me come more in touch with what I think of as more authentically who I am. And it's a hard word, authentic. It means not saying yes when I really want to say no. It means when the man yesterday at the shoe store started talking to me like I was not even there, and he was a robot, and he started to say, well, you should buy this $300 pair of shoes because X, Y, and Z. And I said, I don't really have the money right now for that, to spend on that. And then he continued to say, and I just looked at him and I said, you're not really good at your job if you don't pay attention to me and what I'm saying. And, he like
It woke him up.
Woke him up, right.
Yeah.
But that's being authentic without going around saying, I'm just going to tell people what I think. It's in the moment, not letting anyone hurt me. And in the moment, allowing myself to be vulnerable to when they do, but also take care of myself. I think being authentic is to not be afraid of the messages I feel like sometimes I get intuitively that help me understand what's going on in the world, and not blow them out of proportion or underestimate them. Someone once said to me, Rona, take your own measure. I think that's part of authenticity. So I don't know if that's what you were thinking about, me talking about more about what it's really like right now.
It's wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and yet, Rosie, there's this funny feeling, like I had when I hadn't yet done the radio show, and I knew I should.
Yes.
That says, okay, Rona, take that next step. But I'm not sure what it is. Yeah, do you know?
I totally know. No, I don't know your next step.
Okay, I thought maybe you could
I
tell
feel
me.
like this is part of your next step.
Okay, good.
I feel like this is part of your next step.
Sometimes it's saying things out loud, isn't it? Yeah.
Especially for you.
Yeah.
You really download your wisdom in the moment. That's just something that I've noticed about you, just knowing you as a person and the way that you work. If you just kind of give yourself, and we've talked about this in relation to the writing too, that if you just give yourself space, and someone who actually is interested in what you have to say, it all just comes flowing out.
And you know, Rosie, you listening and being interested is a piece of it, because for those people who are the doers and the sayers and the helpers, you know, again, we don't often have that person to listen, and telling our stories is very important. But you just said something that made me realize that I had a father who kind of wanted people to like him for his non-authentic self, and pretended to be who he wasn't. And I was in a Gurdjieff group for a long time with a leader who was very charismatic and hurtful to people, I believe, and thought too much of himself. And I think some of those models, and who knows, maybe there's some past lives involved too. You never know, right? Some of those models have made me afraid to speak sometimes my truth and to speak strongly, because I don't want to be that person who speaks out as though I know the answers for you, or I know this. And so I think for me, it's like coming back to what the wisdom is that I have, and based on all the experience I have and the help I've had from the universe, to be able to speak honestly and openly. And that is a gift. And I think it's a gift for everyone. You know, whether they're in the media or out there in the world, or whether they're just talking with a friend, and they don't have to pretend that everything's okay. And they can speak about what's important to them, and which is different than just complaining. And I don't know how to put what category that falls in, but I think it's authentic listening and speaking.
Yeah, it just reminds me of how it's sort of like a very blossoming in a way. We have to kind of go through this very fine line, tightrope walking. And the fear, when we have like these parallel fears, one is the fear of not being good enough, so putting ourselves out there, and all those, we all have our own not good enough stories, right? We have the dyslexia, I've got my own.
I was a bedwetter too. I mean,
throw the bedwetting in. We've all got our things, right? And so, like, we have these lives that are so busy and stressed out, so it's really easy to think that all the external things are what's holding us back. And often they do make it difficult. But when we say, well, okay, but how might I be using all of this as a distraction for my growth process, which is going to require me to face my fear of failure, and then even more so my fear of really shining.
Yes.
And this is what I'm hearing you talk about as well. And all of what are the conditioning voices that we got in relation to that? Who are the people that we saw as successful in the world? How did they hold their power? Did they use it wisely? Did they use it lovingly with humility? Or did they abuse that power? And if we're afraid of either abusing our power or becoming, disempowered and oppressed, we can stay there for a really long time and not move in that paralysis state. So what I'm hearing you say is that the blossoming process requires so many things, but one is to take that risk.
That's right.
Of just doing it anyway, and then allowing all the feelings that it brings up to surface, and to be with those feelings too, and yet not let them stop us from taking our next little tiny step. And sometimes that step is just listening and hearing a message.
Yes.
And sometimes that step is reaching out for support from somebody who knows us and loves us and believes in us, and we don't believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. No, Rosie, you just said it so clearly. And I noticed, like, when I schedule time with my husband, what that kind of step, what it does is it says so many things. It says, I'm important. And I deserve to have that hour and a half with someone I love where we can just be. And doing that helps to separate out those other voices that say you have too much to do, and you shouldn't be doing that, and do you really want to get so vulnerable and close to someone, and are you safe, and trust issues and all that. But doing something very concrete kind of is a way to take it's like practicing self-love, it's practicing self-compassion. I think of things like gratitude. We talk about people, if you want to learn to be grateful, you actually have to take some steps and say, I'm going to think about what I'm grateful for. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to say it. These things don't just come. Our intention helps us manifest that newer possibility. Because the old forces that say, I'm not smart, I'm not cute enough, I don't dress well enough, whatever it all says, I should do more, I wish I could do more, all those things have such strength, and to deflate the strength a little bit, to minimize the strength, you have to bring something else in that's, I think, grows in strength, which says, I am good enough. I had a mantra come to me a few weeks ago when I went to a silent retreat, and it's such a beautiful, simple statement that has helped me these past few weeks. It's, with each breath, I come home to all of me. And I realize why I love it is it reminds me to breathe, and that I come home, meaning like I can sense all of me, and it's all of me. It's the me that has, a pimple, or didn't get enough sleep, or made a mistake and yelled at someone when I shouldn't have. It's all of me. And it takes practice.